Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinatha Radha Gopinatha Shri Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Mai. Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. His Divine Grace Shalasi Bhaktivinoda Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Thy Gaur Pramanande. Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, titled The Lord in the Heart, text number 7. Kastam tu anadritya paranuchintam. Kastam tu anadritya paranuchintam. Rite pasuna satim nama kuryat. Rite pasuna satim nama kuryat. Pasyanjanam patitam vaitaranyam. Pasyanjanam patitam vaitaranyam. Swakarmajan paritapanjusanam. Swakarmajan paritapanjusanam. Kastam tu anadritya paranuchintam. Rite pasuna satim nama kuryat. Pasyanjanam patitam vaitaranyam. Swakarmajan paritapanjusanam. Kastam tu anadritya paranuchintam. Rite pasuna satim nama kuryat. Pasyanjanam patitam vaitaranyam. Swakarmajan paritapanjusanam. Kastam
Matuya Viteka Kudasatina Matuya Pasyanjanam Bhajitam Vaitaranya Pasyanjanam Bhajitam Vaitaranya Sakamajam Bharita Pantusanam Sakamajam Bharita Pantusanam Kastantanam Vitya Paranuchintam Kastantanam Vitya Paranuchintam Vite Vasuna Satina Matuya Pasyanjanam Bhajitam Vaitaranya Pasyanjanam Bhajitam Vaitaranya Sakamajam Bharita Pantusanam.
Word for word translation. Ka, who else? Tam, that. Tu, but. Anadritya, by neglecting. Para anuchintam, transcendental thoughts. Rite, without. Pasun, the materialist. Asatim, in the non-permanent. Nama, name. Kuryat, will adopt. Pasyan, seeing definitely. Janam, the general mass of people. Patitam, fallen. Vaitaranyam, in Vaitarani, the river of suffering. Swakarmajan, produced from one's own work. Paritapan, suffering. Jusanam, being overtaken by. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as the consequence of accruing the result of their own work. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurumritam Yena Tasmei Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class. So we'll just go line by line through the purport today. Purport. In the Vedas, it is said that persons who are attached to demigods to the exclusion of the Supreme Personal Godhead are like the animals who follow the herdsmen even though they are being taken to the slaughterhouse. The materialists, like animals, also do not know how they are being misdirected by neglecting the transcendental thought of the Supreme Person. So firstly, Prabhupada is talking about how, in general, materialists, or at least in Vedic culture, they will worship demigods just to get some temporary benefits, some benefits for sense gratification. And Prabhupada is saying that they're just like animals who follow the herdsmen, even though they're taken to the slaughterhouse. So, as we all know from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains that those who worship the demigods, they consider less intelligent, because the demigods, they themselves, they're mortal, and they themselves have to die one day. And so by worshiping demigods, we can't get liberation from entanglement in this material world. And even though we might worship demigods, get some material benefits, still Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that benefit will just be temporary, have a beginning and end, after some time will go away. And the best case scenario, if we worship the demigods, is that you attain their planets. But again, Krishna explains that from the lowest planet to the highest planet in this whole material world, everywhere is a place of birth, death, old age, and disease. And everywhere, every single planet, there is suffering. So it's not that if we worship, say Surya, go to the sun god's planet, everything will be nice. No, over there, there's also suffering. You have to go through birth, death, old age, and disease. So Krishna says we should endeavor to get out of this whole material universe itself. In Bhagavatam, we see so many examples of how even the demigods, they go through many sufferings, they go through many distresses and problems in life. It's not that, okay, they have the heavenly planets, they live for 10,000 years or so many, very long lifetime and everything is very nice there. Their body is very young, they have different mystic powers and so many nice facilities for mature enjoyment. But they also go through a lot of suffering and problems. We see with Indra so many times the demons will be attacking Indra and his throne will be taken, and then Indra would have to go in hiding, become invisible, and the demons would come take over his kingdom. And we even see how, I think in 9th canto Bhagavatam, it's explained how Soma, who is the moon god, he becomes attracted to his guru's wife, Brihaspati, and then he kidnaps or forcibly takes away his own guru's wife, and then he forcibly begets a child through her. So these sort of things, which even in our today modern civilization would be considered very, very, very bad, and such a person will be put in jail. Those sorts of things are happening even in the higher planetary systems. Even amongst demigods like the moon god. So through all these examples about them, we see how it's not that, okay, if you worship demigods and you get nice sense gratification, and then you go to the planet and then everything will be nice. No. Even over there, such crazy things like this also happen. They also go through many problems, and they also go through suffering. And although in general they enjoy more mature happiness, still there's an end to it. After a certain number of years, they also have to give up the body, and they also have to fall back down to planet Earth. And also another point is that these demigods, at the end of the day, they're also all devotees of Krishna. So Prabhupada writes that instead of, like if you want to, let's say you have a plant or a tree, the most intelligent thing would be to go and directly water the root of the tree instead of going and watering each single leaf of the tree. The best way to get the most benefit is you just go to the root and just offer water to the root, which is Krishna. So all these demigods that these materialists worship, they're all actually devotees of Krishna. They're all actually working under Krishna's direction. Just like there's one king, and under the king there's many ministers. All the ministers, they're subordinate to the king. And whatever benefits different ministers give to their followers or to whoever is working under them, that's all actually the king's property they're giving. So the same thing Krishna explains in the Gita, that whatever benefits that these demigods are giving, they're actually given by me only. I am the source of all these benefits that these demigods are giving. From me they're borrowing and they're giving to their worshippers. And we see an example of this like in 5th canto, when Jada Bharat, he could remember his previous life. So in this life, when he was born as son of a Brahmana, Jada Bharat, he pretended to be a crazy man, a madman, so he wouldn't get entangled in material affairs. So his brothers, seeing him as just a crazy guy, good for nothing, they thought, okay, he's just good for nothing, why not use him as a scarecrow, in our farm. So they put him out and they asked him to stand there and act as a scarecrow to scare away, whatever birds or different pests would come, so the crops wouldn't be eaten by them. And then these worshippers of Kali, they were going by and they were looking for a suitable human offering to offer to their worshipful deity Kali as a human sacrifice to get material benefit. And suddenly they see this big, huge of a man, nicely, strongly built with big muscles, very tall, broad, young. And they think, wow, this guy, he's so big and muscular, so much, meat, flesh he has. This will be a perfect offering for our goddess Kali. So they go and they see that this person, he's like retarded, he's dumb, he doesn't have brains. So they forcibly, against his will, they pick him up and they take him back to their residence and they start preparing to offer him as a sacrifice, as a human sacrifice to goddess Kali. And just when they're about to cut open his throat with their sword, the deity of Kali, she manifests herself, comes out, and she takes the sword away from the hand of these Kali worshippers, and then with that same sword, she starts chopping off the heads of all of her own worshippers. And in the Papa explains that from this we see that all these demigods like Kali, Indra, or whoever else, they're all actually devotees of Krishna. So if certain worshippers, like in this case, the worshippers Kali, when they're going to harm a devotee, Kali, she can't stand that because her master is Krishna, and one of Krishna's dear servants is now being harmed by her own worshippers. So naturally, Kali, she comes out to protect her master's dear servant, and with the same sword, she starts killing her own worshippers who are worshipping her. So this is one very graphic example of how all these demigods, actually, they're all servants of Krishna. So intelligent person, he thinks, instead of worshipping all these different ministers, why not go directly to the king? That would be the most intelligent, best use of our time. Okay, we'll continue on with the purport. The materialists, like animals, also do not know how they are being misdirected by neglecting the transcendental thought of the Supreme Person. No one can remain vacant of thought. It is said that an idle brain is a devil's workshop because a person who cannot think in the right way must think of something which may bring about disaster. So Prabhupada is talking about the importance of thinking about Krishna. So it's mentioned that there is 3 functions of the mind. There is thinking, feeling, and willing. So Prabhupada explains that through our mind we should always be thinking of different thoughts of Krishna, either pastimes of Krishna, something we read or heard, or thinking about how to carry out Krishna service. And through our mind we should also be having spiritual feelings, feelings of, going out, on Sankirtan, spreading the glories, or feelings of singing in Kirtan, feelings of hearing more about Krishna. And we should also be thinking, feeling, and willing. We should cultivate spiritual desires to engage in Krishna service. And Prabhupada says, unless we engage all these propensities for thinking, propensities for feeling, and propensities for willing, all of these we engage in Krishna service, then naturally the mind will go to material things. Instead of thinking of Krishna, we'll start thinking of material things. Instead of feeling spiritual things, spiritual emotions in Krishna service, we'll start having material feelings like envy or greed, anger, things like that. And instead of desiring to serve Krishna and Krishna's devotees, material desires will start creeping up in our heart. And the best way to overcome this is to positively engage our mind 24 hours in Krishna's service. Prabhupada, he will explain that Krishna is just like the sun and Maya is like darkness. Wherever there is Krishna, Maya cannot be there. And Prabhupada said that Krishna and Maya, they're standing right next to each other. On this side is Krishna and this side is Maya. As soon as we move away from Krishna, Maya is right there to take us. There's no middle ground where we can be, a little bit in Krishna, a little bit in Maya. Either you're in Krishna or Maya. So that's why Prabhupada, again, he'll emphasize, that we should focus on Krishna, engage our senses, engage our mind, intelligence, everything in Krishna's service. And that way we can protect ourselves from Maya. The materialists are always worshipping some minor demigods, although this is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita 7.20. As long as a person is illusioned by material gains, he petitions the respective demigods to draw some particular benefit, which is after all illusory and non-permanent. The enlightened transcendentalist is not captivated by such illusory things. Therefore, he is always absorbed in the transcendental thought of the Supreme Person in different stages of realization, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In the previous verse, it is suggested that one should think of the Supersoul, which is one step higher than the impersonal thought of Brahman, as it was suggested in the case of contemplating the Virat Roop of the personality of Godhead. So one thing Prabhupada is saying here, that the enlightened transcendentalist, he doesn't become captivated by these material benefits that the demigods give. So Prahlad Maharaj, he talks about this a lot in his prayers to Lord Nrsimhadev or his teachings to his classmates in his school. One thing Prahlad Maharaj says is that this so-called material enjoyment that everyone is trying to get in this human body, it's available in any species of life. So Prahlad Maharaj explains that the pleasure one gets from eating, sleeping, mating, and so on, it's the same quality in all the species of life, which means the same pleasure a hog gets when he eats stool, that's the same pleasure a human being gets when he eats pizza. Or the same pleasure hogs, dogs, cats, animals, they get in engaging in sex life, that's the exact same pleasure human beings get when they engage in the same thing. There is no difference in quality, it's exactly the same. The packaging appears different by Maya's illusory energy, but actually the substance, the flavor is exactly the same. That's why we see the example of Indra. He was cursed and he fell down from his position from the heavenly planets and he became a pig here on planet Earth. And he was living here as a pig for some time. He had his own pig wife and pig children, and he was enjoying life very nicely. And then the time of his curse period was over. And then Lord Brahma comes back, planet Earth, and says, okay, Indra, now you can come back and you can take back your post in the heavenly kingdom as the king, of the heavenly planets. For so long you've been here on planet Earth in this, terrible body of a pig. Now you can come back. And what does Indra says? No, I'm very happy here. I have my nice, pig wife, pig children, so much nice food I have, everything I have here. I don't need to go back. I'm very happy and satisfied. So this is the power of Maya. That even though we're suffering, Maya will make it look like as if we're enjoying. And Prahlad Maharaj explains that same quality of mature happiness is there in every species of life. So human beings, when we engage in these mature activities, it's not that we're experiencing something higher, we're experiencing the same thing that animals experience. That's why Bhagavatam explains, Prahlad Maharaj explains, we should look beyond. Look at a type of happiness which is of a higher quality. And Narad Muni, he also explains the same thing in first canto. He says to Srila Vyasadeva that one should endeavor for that thing which is not attainable in all the 14 planetary systems. One should look beyond these 14 planetary systems and look for something higher than that. And also earlier on in this chapter, there's one verse which Sukadeva Goswami, he says, this is the text 3 of this chapter. This is the verse which Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, he gave class on. He was explaining how the newness of mature enjoyment is actually in the names only, which means that it's the same thing that human beings, like Prahlad Maharaj says, punascharvita charvanam, that everyone's simply chewing the chewed. So the same thing persons were doing 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, that's the exact same thing we're doing now. But materialists, through the advertisements, they use different names and advertise things in such a way, put nice videos and advertisements, nice pictures, to make it look like as if it's something new. But actually we're doing the same thing that everyone else used to do before. So this is the way how Maya, she tricks us. Another thing Prahlad Maharaj says in 7th canto is, he uses the word Shruti Shrukaya. So Sukha means happiness, and Prahlad Maharaj says Shruti means hearing. So Shruti Shrukaya means that such mature happiness, it's only happiness in words only. That means when someone describes it, it sounds okay, yeah, it'll be very nice, People in the ads or materialists, they'll blab on, of their mature activities. Oh, I was doing this last Friday night, I was doing this Saturday night, it was very nice, it was like this, it was like that. If you get this thing, you'll be happy. If you get that thing, you'll be like that. So only in words, only in speaking, or only in hearing, it sounds very nice. But when you actually do it, your expectations not match. Like we have some expectation in our mind that when I finally get this material object, or when I finally engage in this kind of sense gratification, I'll be satisfied and I'll get pleasure like this. So in our mind we start calculating, in our mind we start imagining, or we start hearing others of how they were doing. But when we actually do it or engage in an activity, we realize actually it wasn't as fulfilling as what we thought it would be. Another word Prahlad Maharaj uses, Maya Sukhaya, which means just illusory happiness. So in this way Bhagavatam is training us to see not just the externals, it's training us to see the actual reality, it's training us to see through the veil of illusion that Maya is putting before us. We'll continue on with the purport. Intelligent persons who can see properly may look into the general conditions of the living entities who are wandering in the cycle of 8,400,000 species of life, as well as in different classes of human beings. It is said that there is an everlasting belt of water called the river Vaitarani at the entrance of the plutonic planet of Yamaraj, who punishes sinners in different manners. So we can talk a bit about this, about where do such materialistic persons go after death. So in the Puranas it's explained about, there's some details given what happens at the time of death. So this is for materialists, so someone who's not a devotee, what happens to them. So it's said that after one has given up his body, then one is given a special, like a subtle body for the soul to be in. It's called like a preta body. And this preta body one is given for 13 days. So there's like a 13-day period after death. And during this 13-day period, by Krishna's arrangement, the soul who has just left his body, he will get a flashback of all the things he's done in his life. So in 13 days, he will get a fast-paced movie of whatever he's done throughout his 50 years or 60 years or how many years he lived. And in those 13 days, he will see every single action he did in his life. And the reason for this is, let's say just after he died, he got taken to Yamaraj. And Yamaraj started listening, okay, you did this, and for that you have to go to hell and this planet, and you have to suffer like in this condition for this many years. Then the soul will argue back, no, I don't remember doing that, I don't remember doing that, no, I thought I was a very good person, I was very nice, I don't remember doing this, I don't remember doing that. And it will argue with the judge. So to stop this, for this 13-day period is given, where the soul sees every single thing he's done in his life. He's given a fast-paced movie of his own life. So after the 13 days, then he realizes, actually, I've wasted this whole life, I've done so many crazy, sinful things. Yes, I deserve to be punished. So when he comes in front of Yamaraj, then he's a bit submissive. And when Yamaraj puts out his punishment, okay, you've done this and this and that, you have to go to this hellish planet, then he's more mentally prepared to accept a judgment. Otherwise, if he goes straight up to Yamaraj, it will be too much for him to handle. So that's why this 13-day period is given, where he gets this special preta body, where he can see back to his past life or whatever he's done. And that's why in Vedic culture, there's the process of pinda, where during these 13 days, if one of the family members, the son or the daughter, if they, let's say, worship the deities, worship Vishnu, offer some bhoga, and that same Mahaprasad of Vishnu, if they offer to their passed away family member, then that person in the family who's passed away, then he gets a human body in the next life. He gets saved from this whole ordeal of going to Yamaraj and things like that. So that's why in Vedic culture you see persons doing like this thing called pinda, worshipping Vishnu and offering Vishnu's Mahaprasad or doing different pujas and in the name of the person who has passed away. So one goes to Yamaraj, and Yamaraj, he sees then his list of different things he's done. And then Yamaraj, he puts him in a particular hellish planet to suffer. And descriptions of this is given in the 5th canto, how for different sinful activities, what type of punishment one gets. For example, for one who engages in illicit activities of drinking alcohol, for him, he's put in a hell where molten metal will be poured down his throat and it will burn him. And in the hellish planets, one will be given a particular type of body in which, although he's suffering, he won't die. So he'll feel the pain of molten, metal going down his throat, but he won't die. He will just feel the suffering. Or they'll throw him off a cliff to the ground, hundreds of meters down, and his body will pain everywhere, but he still won't down. Then again, they'll take him to a cliff and again throw him down. In this way, there's different graphic descriptions given in 5th canto of different punishments for different sinful activities. And all this is given in the end of 5th canto. And then at the start of 6th canto, Prahlad Maharaj, being a Vaishnava, naturally a Vaishnava is para dukkha dukhi. He is very sad to see the suffering of others. When Prahlad Maharaj, he hears all these different types of suffering that sinful persons go through in the hellish planets, naturally Prahlad Maharaj as a Vaishnava, Prahlad Maharaj, Parikshit Maharaj, he asked this question, that how can these persons, who are suffering the hellish planets, how can they be delivered? What is the process by which they can be saved? I'm feeling very bad for them. Is there any way they can be freed? And initially, Sukadeva Goswami, to test his disciple, he says, okay, by the process of atonement, one can overcome, his sinful activities, one can be saved from the hellish planets. And Parikshit Maharaj, he passes the test and he says, no, I don't think atonement will work. Atonement is just like the bathing of an elephant. The elephant goes into the water, he takes bath, he's clean, but again he comes back to the beach, and again he rolls around in the mud, and again it becomes dirty. So the propensity to commit the sinful activity will still be there. One may atone and for a particular sinful activity, but that desire or that propensity to do that sinful activity, it's still there in his heart. So again, he'll do the same sinful activity again. And in this way, he'll just keep going on and on. So it's not really the solution for the problem. And then Sukadeva Goswami, he gives him the actual remedy, which is obviously Bhakti Yoga. And then Sukadeva Goswami, he explains a nice story from the Shastras, from history, which explains the glories of Bhakti. How by just taking shelter of the process of Bhakti, one can be freed from having to go to the hellish planets, one can be freed from all of his sinful reactions. And Sukadeva Goswami, he then explains the story of Ajamil, which we all know. So Ajamil, throughout his whole life, he did so many sinful things. First of all, he was married to a nice Brahmana wife, and he gave up his own wife, and then married a prostitute. And just to maintain that prostitute, Bhagavatam explains, he used to steal, rob, and engage in different sinful activities just to get money to maintain that prostitute. And he had many different children through that prostitute. And it's mentioned that when he was very, very old, like 80 years old, 90 years old, he had one small son. So that means he was still engaging in sex life even at such an elderly age of 80 or 90. And as we all know the story, he named the son Narayan. And Prabhupada explains the reason he named the son Narayan is because before he got contaminated or got involved in all this, he was actually practicing brahmacharya, he was actually, practicing proper Brahmana life. And because of that small little bit of devotion he did in his past, in his childhood times, because of that, the super soul in Ajamil's heart inspired him to name his son Narayan. So he'll get some credit. So by being inspired by the super soul, he named his youngest son Narayan. And at the time of death, when Yamadutas were coming to take him to the hellish planets, to take him to Yamaraj, then he was saved because he chanted Narayan's name. Even though he wasn't consciously thinking of Narayan, he was thinking of his son. Still, Krishna is so merciful. Because it was chanted without offense, Krishna gave him credit. And he was saved from going to the hellish planets. So this is the power of bhakti. And I remember one lecture, Taman Krishna Maharaj, he says that, we should give every single person in society an opportunity to get one of Srila Prabhupada's books. Otherwise, Yamaraj will have problem. How will Yamaraj will have problem? Taman Krishna Maharaj explains, if we don't give everyone an opportunity to take a book, then when Yamaraj comes to take the soul to the hellish planets, the soul will argue, no, I didn't know. I didn't know that I'm supposed to do bhakti. No one told me. No one told me from childhood, my friends, family. No one came and told me I should do bhakti. No one told me to do devotional service. In this way, one will argue with Yamaraj. But if we give everyone a chance to get a Krishna conscious literature, then Yamaraj can fight back and say, no, you did have an opportunity. In 2020, on this day, one Sankirtan devotee came with a book to give to you, and you rejected, you didn't take it. So you did have an opportunity. Not only that, but again in 2024, 4 years later, another Sankirtan devotee came knocking on your door, and again you rejected. Not only that, later on when you were 60 years old, you were going out on the streets in George Street, and a Harinam was coming, and you closed your ears and you ran away. You didn't want to hear this religious thing going on. And then, this day again. So unless we go out, Taman Krishna Maharaj explains, and we give every single person in society an opportunity to come to Krishna's lotus feet, either through holy name, Prabhupada's books, or prasadam, then Yamaraj will have a problem. All these souls will fight back. How can you take me to hellish planets? I never got an opportunity to worship Krishna. It's not fair. I never knew. So this is one nice thing. I was remembering Taman Krishna Maharaj says. We'll continue on with the purport. After being subjected to such sufferings, a sinner is awarded a particular species of life according to his deeds in the past. So this is another important point. So as I was explaining before, so the 13-day period is given where one remembers his past activities, then one goes to Yamaraj and is mentally prepared. And Yamaraj, seeing his sinful activities, he gives him a particular type of punishment which will prepare him for the next body. So let's say one has done certain types of sinful activities which will destine him to get the body of a dog in his next life. And so the Puranas explain that to help that soul condition himself to dog consciousness, Yamaraj will give him a particular punishment by which he'll be trained to act like a dog. Which means he'll be put, let's say for example, in a condition where there won't be anything to eat except for bones. And because there's nothing else to eat, he'll be forced to chew on that bone. And this way, for thousands and thousands of years, he'll be conditioned to chew on bones, or for this example. And then after that, after he's been conditioned to chew on bones or act like a dog, then that soul will come to planet Earth in a dog's body. So in this way, whichever species one is destined to come into, like I say, a body of a dog or a hog. So if someone is destined to come as a hog, then in the hellish planets, he will be forced to eat stool, for thousands and thousands of years. So in this way, his consciousness will be conditioned to eat stool, stool, stool. So then finally, when he gets the body of a hog, it will just be natural for him. So this is how, this is Krishna's arrangement, how everything is planned out. Such living entities are punished by Ramaraj as seen in different varieties of conditioned life. Some of them are in heaven and some of them are in hell. Some of them are brahmanas and some of them are misers. But no one is happy in this material world. And all of them are either class A, B or C prisoners suffering because of their own deeds. The Lord is impartial to all circumstances of the sufferings of the living entities. But to one who takes shelter at his lotus feet, the Lord gives proper protection. And he takes such a living entity back home, back to himself. So one nice analogy Prabhupada is giving here at the end, that this material world is like a prison. And in prison, any prison, there'll be different gradations of prison cells. There'll be some prison cells which will be like high security, which will be like solitary. You're just there by yourself. Everything will be dark. You'll have chains on your hand, chains on your legs. You have no one to talk to. So much limited restriction. You can't do anything. You're just there in solitary confinement. And then there'll be something higher where you're in a cell with maybe another person, another 2, 3 persons. You don't have chains around your arms and your legs. You have a bit more freedom. You can see light, and then there'll be another prison cell, even higher, where you might have your own TV. Nowadays, I've seen in prison cells, I heard they even have TV. So the prisoners can watch TV also. And they might be given more opulent food. So this way in prisons, there's like different gradations. But at the end of the day, you're still a prisoner. Whether in prison class C, B, or A, Prabhupada has explained, you're still a prisoner, you're still trapped in the prison. And Prabhupada explaining that this material world is like this. That it doesn't matter, even if you're in the heavenly planets, you're still a prisoner in this material world. You still have to, as I was explaining before, you still have to go through so many different sufferings in life. As I was explaining before, with Soma kidnapping his own spiritual master's wife, how different demons are always attacking the demigods, how Indra is constantly in anxiety, who will take up his post. So it's not that if you go to heavenly planets, everything will be hunky-dory. No, you're still in the prison. You might be in a higher class of prison cell, where you have more nice material facilities, but still at the end of the day, you're in the prison. So Prabhupada explains we should get out of this prison. And Prabhupada later on, in other purports, he will extend this analogy and say that sometimes the king, taking compassion, will enter into the prison. And foolish prisoners, seeing the king or the prime minister in the prison, they will think, oh, he's just one of us, he's also a prisoner. So that's what Prabhupada is explaining to be less intelligent materialists or Mayavadis who think Krishna is just like one of us. Krishna has a material body. But intelligent person, you understand that although he's in the prison with us, he's actually the king, he's beyond. Although he's in the world, he's out of this world, he's transcendental. And the reason the king comes is because the king is feeling compassion for all these prisoners suffering, and the king is looking out, who are those particular prisoners who are genuinely repenting for what they have done, who are looking beyond this and who have rectified themselves, who can properly come back to the normal world outside and properly function. So this way, Krishna, he comes as incarnations, million after million, to reclaim these prisoners who are suffering this material world. Sometimes he comes personally, and sometimes he sends his own pure devotees from the spiritual world to rescue us. And to one, Prabhupada ends Prabhupada by saying, to one who takes shelter at his lotus feet, the Lord gives proper protection, and he takes such a living entity back home, back to himself. Okay, with this we'll stop here. Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jaguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanande. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, you were saying he suffers thousands of years in hell, getting trained up for his animal body. So is it described in the Bhagavatam that it seems like for the man it's thousands of years, but in reality it's just like a moment?
Yeah, because the time scale is relative, in different Like Prabhupada explains, like every single species, they live for 100 years, but it's relative. So for an ant, his whole lifespan is like 100 years also, but the ant's 100 years is very small compared to our 100 years. Like Brahma, we say Brahma, he lives for 100 years, but obviously his 100 years is very different to our 100 years. So in the same way, in the hellish planets, we can see it that way also. Although Bhagavatam explains it's like thousand years, but maybe compared to our time scale, it will be like a short period of time. Maybe not, like that. But the main point is that the living entity, he goes through a lot of suffering. So that's why Bhagavatam explains that. Or a devotee, when he hears about this, first thing, he doesn't want to go there, but second thing, because he's taken shelter of Krishna's feet, he understands, okay, I'm not going to go there, but he thinks about others, others out there. He sees, okay, all these persons, they're not taken shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, they're all headed towards those hellish planets, so I need to do something about it. Just like Maharaj Parikshit was thinking, is there any way they can be saved? So the same mood, as devotees we should all have, what can we do to save all those souls, give them at least some sukriti, some connection with Krishna by which they can be saved from those hellish planets. So yeah.
It seems a contradiction when you have Kali protecting her devotee, chopping off the head of all the sacrificing, and yet they are serving their master, but at the same time Chandra's stealing the wife of his guru. So they are devoting, but they're doing those acts as well.
Yeah, it's mentioned that in general, these demigods, a lot of them, they're not pure devotees. So they're just like practicing, like Kama Mishra Bhaktas. So sometimes they get overcome by pride, lust. So we see with Indra, he get overcome by pride, that in Govardhan Puja, these sacrifices are supposed to be meant for me, I am the king of the heaven. Who is this talkative boy, who are they worshipping? So sometimes, in general, the devotees, they worship Krishna, but sometimes they got overcome by pride, or sometimes they get overcome by his lower qualities like lust. For example, with Soma, he gets attracted to his own guru's wife. So they're kind of like us, like we're all devotees, we're all considered as devotees, we're all worshipping Radha Gopinath, but sometimes, our mind overcomes us, sometimes pride gets to our head, and we might say something to others that might offend. Sometimes we get overcome by lust, envy towards others. So the demigods, they're like that. Not all the demigods are pure devotees. We can say Brahma is a pure devotee. He's the head of our sampradaya. Our sampradaya is Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya sampradaya. But others like Indra, Soma, not necessarily pure devotees. So they also get overcome by these emotions. And in general, Bhagavatam explains, the best place in this whole material universe to practice Krishna consciousness is here in the middle planetary system, here on planet Earth. Because in the higher planetary systems, the facilities for sense gratification is so much that it's very hard for them to think of Krishna. Because there's just so much sense gratification. Like they go through old age and disease also, but their lifespan was something like this. Like for thousands of years, they'll have a youthful body. Just right at the end, they'll suddenly become old and they'll just die. For us, old age seems so prolonged, for so many years, old age, disease. But for them, thousands of years, they enjoy very nicely in youthful body. Just right at the end, suddenly the body will come out and they'll die. So in such a scenario where so much sense gratification, so much material enjoyment is available, it's very hard for them to focus on Krishna. And very easily, they can get overcome, by these materialistic emotions. That's why in Bhagavatam is mentioned that all these demigods, they pray that they may be born in planet Earth. Because in this planet Earth, there's a balance of happiness, distress, and one can more easily focus on Krishna actually. Yep.
We hear that lots of times this Sankirtan movement is spreading all throughout the universe. So maybe sometimes when you hear pastimes or in the Bhagavatam's pastimes of like the Lord and his devotees in higher planets. Have you heard of any pastimes, Sankirtan pastimes, the Lord and his devotees in the hellish planets?
The hellish planets. Just brief, I can't remember where I've heard, but just because you're asking. There's some story of Maharaj Ambarish's brother, or have you heard that one? Yeah, I've just briefly heard in classes, but I can't fully explain. But I know there's descriptions given like that when certain residents of these planets, when they hear the holy name or when they chant, suddenly they give up that particular hellish body and they get liberated to go to Vaikuntha, things like that. But I can't remember where exactly, just briefly I've heard in classes. I can't give any specific example.
Well, there was a description that Yamaraj had to seek help for a moment.
Maharaj, you just stream in.
Maharaj used it had to seek help for a moment. Is there any more description of that? When he saw help for a moment, why?
No, I haven't read Mahabharata, so I can. Okay. We'll stop here. Enter Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jaguru Shri Prabhupada ki jai.